I've never believed in ghosts, demons, or anything supernatural. Even after what happened that winter, I still try to tell myself there was a logical explanation. But there isn't. There can't be. It started when I moved into my new apartment complex about 5 years ago. I was 23, fresh out of college, broke, and desperate for any kind of housing that didn't smell like cigarette smoke or cat piss. The complex was an older 3-story building on the edge of town. Nothing special, but the rent was cheap and utilities were included. The only weird thing was that the landlord insisted on one rule: never open the door if someone knocks twice. He said it just like that. No context. No warning about thieves or pranksters, just that one line. I laughed, thinking it was some old superstition. He didn't laugh back. The first few weeks were normal. I worked nights at a gas station, so I'd usually get home around 2 or 3 a.m. The building was mostly quiet by then, except for the creaking pipes and the humming elevator that never seemed to stop moving, even when nobody was inside. One night, about a month after I moved in, I was microwaving leftovers when I heard it. Knock, knock. 2 sharp taps on my apartment door. It startled me, but I figured maybe it was a neighbor. Maybe someone needed help or was just drunk. I looked through the peephole, nothing, just the dimly lit hallway. "Hello?" I called, no response. After a moment, I shrugged it off. Probably some kid playing around. But when I turned away, I realized something strange. My microwave had stopped beeping. The clock was frozen at 3:03. That gave me chills. Still, I went to bed convinced it was just a power flicker. The next night, same thing, right around 3 a.m. Knock, knock, 2 perfect taps. I looked again. Nobody there. Now I was starting to get creeped out. I even mentioned it to my neighbor, Janine, the lady who lived across from me. She was in her 60s, sweet, and always smelled like coffee and cinnamon. When I told her about the knocking, her face went pale. "You heard it?" she whispered. "Yeah, it's probably just someone messing around." She shook her head. "No, honey, it's not a someone." She said a woman used to live in my unit, apartment 3B, years ago. The lady had a boyfriend who would visit her at night, always knocking twice to signal she could open the door. One night the knocking came again, but when she opened it, it wasn't him. It was a man wearing her boyfriend's jacket, his face hidden by the hood. He forced his way in and Janine stopped talking. Just said, "They never found the woman." I laughed nervously, pretending I didn't believe her, but when I went back to my apartment that night, I left all the lights on. At 2:59 a.m., I sat by the door waiting. When 3:03 hit, knock, knock, I froze. I didn't breathe. The peephole was dark, completely black, like someone was standing too close. I whispered, "Who's there?" And then I swear to God, a voice whispered back, "Let me in." It wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive. Just soft, pleading, and familiar. I felt my stomach twist because the voice sounded like me. I stumbled backward, heart pounding, and grabbed my phone. I wanted to call someone, anyone, but when I looked at the screen, it showed the wrong time again. 3:03. Frozen. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I told the landlord about it. He just nodded. "That's why I told you never open the door after 2 knocks." I demanded to know what the hell was going on, but he wouldn't say. That night, I heard it again, knock, knock, only this time it didn't stop. 2 knocks, then silence, then 2 more. Over and over, I put my ear against the door and heard faint breathing, slow, wet. Then, from inside my apartment, from behind me, came 2 more knocks. That was when I realized the sound wasn't always coming from the hallway. Sometimes it came from inside the walls. I started babysitting for the Thompsons when I was 16. They lived in one of those quiet, cookie-cutter neighborhoods on the edge of town. Big houses, white fences, motion lights that clicked on if a raccoon even blinked near them. They were nice people, polite, paid well. Always left snacks and a note on the counter with emergency numbers and bedtime rules for their son, Evan. Evan was 7, smart, quiet, and a little odd in the way most quiet kids are. He liked puzzles, dinosaurs, and drawing things that didn't make sense. Long black shapes with stretched faces and way too many arms. I didn't think much of it back then. That first night, everything went fine. We watched Finding Nemo, played board games, and I put him to bed by 9. The house was silent after that. just the ticking of a wall clock and the hum of the refrigerator. But when I went to the kitchen to clean up, I noticed something odd. The basement door was cracked open. I hadn't touched it. In fact, I remembered Mrs. Thompson telling me right before they left. Oh, and one more thing. Please don't let Evan go near the basement. It's under renovation. Her tone had been casual, but her eyes said something else. Something like, don't ask questions. I figured the door had just drifted open from a draft. It was an old house and the air vents wheezed like old lungs, so I shut it and went back to the couch. 15 minutes later, I heard it. Tap, 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 like fingernails on wood. I muted the TV and listened. The sound was faint but steady, coming from somewhere behind me. I turned slowly, toward the basement. The door was cracked open again. I swallowed hard, got up, and walked over. My reflection in the glass frame on the wall looked pale, shaky. I whispered, "Hello?" Even though I knew how stupid that was, no response. Just that same tapping, rhythmic, like someone was knocking softly from the inside. I pushed the door shut again, locked it this time, and walked away fast. When the Thompsons came home around midnight, I didn't say anything. I needed the money, and I didn't want to look like some scared kid. The second time I babysat, things got weirder. Evan was quieter than usual, drawing alone in his room when I arrived. I peeked over his shoulder. It was another one of his black, spidery sketches, but this one looked like a person standing at the bottom of stairs, reaching up toward another figure at the top. "Who's that?" I asked. He didn't answer. He just whispered, "She lives down there." My stomach nodded. "Who?" Evan glanced toward the hallway, toward the basement. "The lady," I laughed nervously. "There's no lady, buddy. Your mom said they're fixing it up down there." "She doesn't like when people lock the door," he said, still staring at his drawing. I didn't know what to say. By 9:15, he was in bed. I was sitting in the living room again, scrolling through my phone, trying not to think about the basement. Then, at 9:47 exactly, tap, 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 it came again. I froze. My first thought was pipes or the heater. But the sound wasn't metallic and it was organic, like fingernails. Then came something worse and Wayne a whisper. "Let me out." It was so faint I thought I'd imagined it. I muted my phone and held my breath. Silence. I forced myself up, tiptoed to the basement, and put my ear against the door. The tapping stopped. Then I heard breathing. Slow, wet. Right on the other side. I jumped back so hard I almost tripped. My phone flashlight was shaking in my hand. I stayed up the rest of the night sitting outside Evan's room, watching the door. When the Thompsons came home, Mrs. Thompson noticed immediately. "You look pale, sweetie. Are you all right?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired." But she looked at the basement door, and for a split second, I saw real fear in her eyes. The third and final time I babysat was on a stormy Saturday. The rain came in sheets, lightning flashing through the curtains every few seconds. When I arrived, Mrs. Thompson was already flustered, rushing out with her husband. "Emergency work thing," she said. "We'll be late. Don't let Evan near the basement, okay?" That sentence again. As soon as they left, Evan tugged on my sleeve. "Can I show you something?" He led me to the basement door. Before I could stop him, he whispered, "She wants to meet you." I yanked him back, heart racing. "Evan, that's enough. Go to your room." He started crying. Not loud, but deep, quiet sobs that made me feel like a monster. I was about to comfort him when I noticed the door was slightly open again. Lightning flashed. For half a second, I saw movement on the steps, something small and pale. I slammed it shut and locked it. The house felt heavy after that, like the air was thicker. The storm outside howled, rain pelting the windows, and I could swear I heard faint humming from somewhere below. It sounded like a woman's voice. I turned on every light in the living room and sat on the couch with Evan beside me. I was scrolling through my phone when the power cut out. Everything went black. Evan whimpered. "She's mad." I fumbled for my flashlight app, my hands shaking. "It's just the storm, okay?" Then came the sound again. Tap, 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 right behind the basement door. I shined my light at it, half expecting to see it swinging open, but it stayed still until I blinked, and in that blink, it creaked open an inch. I whispered, "Stay here," and stood up. Every part of me screamed, "Don't go." But something made me move closer. Maybe the same stupid instinct that makes people check closets in horror movies. I reached the door and looked down the stairs. The light barely reached halfway. Hello? Nothing. Then I saw movement at the bottom, a hand pale and small, wrapping around the railing. I slammed the door and backed away, dragging a chair in front of it. That's when the whisper came again, clearer this time. Please, I'm cold. I grabbed Evan and ran to his room, locking the door. He was trembling, clutching his stuffed bear. She wants to come up, he whispered. I said nothing. For the next 2 hours, I sat there listening to the storm and the occasional tapping from the hallway. Then it stopped. Dead quiet. When the Thompsons came home around midnight, I was crying. Mrs. Thompson didn't even look surprised. She hugged Evan tight, then turned to me. She spoke to you, didn't she? I nodded. Mr. Thompson sighed, rubbing his face. We should have told you. Told me what? He looked toward the basement. Evan had a twin sister. She fell down those stairs when they were little. Broke her neck. We sealed the basement after that. My blood ran cold. She still thinks she's down there, Mrs. Thompson said quietly. I wanted to scream that I'd seen her, but the words wouldn't come out. I left that night and never went back. A few months later, I saw the house listed online. For sale, charming 4-bedroom with finished basement. Out of curiosity, I clicked through the pictures. Everything looked the same, except one thing. In one photo of the basement stairs, you could see a faint shape at the bottom, a little girl, standing perfectly still. And beside her, a shadow that looked like a second figure, reaching up toward her shoulder. I barely lasted a week after that. I moved out and left everything behind. The furniture, my dishes, even my TV. A few months later, I drove past the building out of curiosity. My apartment window was open, and as I slowed to look, I could have sworn I saw a shape standing behind the curtain, facing the street. It raised its hand, and with 2 slow taps, it knocked on the glass. I used to love camping. That changed 2 summers ago. My best friend Mark and I had been planning a weekend trip for months. No phones, no internet, no responsibilities. Just 2 guys, a tent, some beer, and the quiet isolation of the Sierra Nevada mountains. It was supposed to be simple. It wasn't. We left Friday morning and drove 4 hours into the mountains, deep enough that the GPS gave up halfway there. We followed an old logging road until we found a clearing beside a stream. It was perfect. Sunlight breaking through tall pine branches, soft moss underfoot, the sound of rushing water nearby. This is it, Mark said, stretching his arms. No one around for miles, he was right. The silence was thick, the kind you only hear far from civilization. We pitched the tent, collected wood, and by dusk, we were drinking cheap beer by a fire, talking about everything and nothing. When the last of the light faded, we heard something strange, laughter, soft at first, almost like the forest was breathing it. It came from somewhere behind us, maybe 50 yards away, faint but definitely human. We both turned. Did you hear that? I asked. Mark frowned. Probably an echo, or another group camping nearby. But we'd passed no one for miles. The laughter stopped as suddenly as it started. We went to bed around midnight. The woods were pitch black, the kind of dark that feels alive, like it's pressing against the tent fabric. Around 2:30 a.m., I woke up to the sound of whispering. At first, I thought it was Mark talking in his sleep. But when I turned, he was snoring softly. The whispering came from outside. Right outside, I froze. It was faint, a woman's voice saying something too soft to understand. I held my breath. The voice stopped. Then I heard slow, deliberate footsteps circling the tent. Every muscle in my body locked up. I didn't dare unzip the flap or move an inch. After about a minute, the steps stopped. Then, silence. I must have stayed awake for hours, clutching the flashlight until dawn crept in. When I finally stepped outside, there were no footprints. No signs anyone had been there. When I told Mark, he laughed it off. Dude, you were half asleep. Probably animals or wind. I wanted to believe him. That night, it started again. We were roasting marshmallows when the laughter returned, louder this time. It echoed through the trees, bouncing in all directions. A woman's laugh, then a man's, then a third, high-pitched like a child. Mark stood up, shining his flashlight into the woods. Hello, no answer. Just more laughter. Then, clear as day, a woman's voice said, "Come see this." Mark looked at me. You heard that, right? Before I could respond, something brushed against my shoulder, soft but cold like fingertips. I spun around, but no one was there. The flashlight flickered, then from behind us, crack. A branch snapped. We both whipped around. Nothing, just darkness and the sound of the stream. Mark grabbed a rock and whispered, "Maybe someone's messing with us." But I could see it in his face, and he didn't believe that. We decided to go to the tent early, but neither of us slept much. Sometime after midnight, the whispering came again. But now there were two voices, a woman and a man. Mark whispered, "You hearing this?" I nodded. Then the man's voice said something that made my blood freeze. "They took it," the woman responded, soft and angry. "Then take it back." We didn't move, didn't breathe, and then from outside the tent, a child started crying. That was it. Mark unzipped the tent and shined his flashlight, and what we saw will haunt me forever. About 10 feet away stood a small girl, barefoot, wearing what looked like an old white nightgown. Her skin was grayish, her hair plastered to her face like she'd been in the rain. She looked right at us, then smiled, and just like that she turned and ran into the trees. "Jesus Christ," Mark shouted, scrambling out after her. "Mark, don't—" He didn't listen. He bolted into the woods, calling out for her. His flashlight beam bounced wildly between the trees until it disappeared. I waited, heart hammering. 10 minutes passed. 15. Then faintly I heard him scream. I ran after him. The forest was dense and uneven, roots grabbing at my shoes. I called his name over and over. Finally I saw light, his flashlight lying in the dirt, still on but no Mark. What I did see were footprints, bare ones, small, leading deeper into the woods. Against my better judgment, I followed. After maybe 5 minutes, I saw a glow ahead, orange, flickering firelight. Crept closer and peered into a clearing. There were 3 figures sitting around a campfire, 2 adults and a child. The woman's hair was long and matted, her dress old-fashioned and torn. The man was wearing what looked like work clothes from another era, suspenders, heavy boots. The child, it was the same little girl. They were completely still, staring into the flames. "Mark," I whispered. All 3 heads turned toward me in perfect unison. Their eyes were hollow. Empty sockets. I screamed and ran. Branches tore at my arms as I sprinted blindly through the dark, tripping, gasping. I didn't stop until I saw the faint glow of our dying campfire. Mark was there, sitting cross-legged, staring at the ground. "Where the hell did you go?" I shouted, shaking him. He didn't look at me. His eyes were blank. "They're not gone," he whispered. I grabbed our keys and dragged him to the car. We drove through the night until we hit the ranger station at dawn. The rangers didn't believe us at first until we told them exactly where we'd camped. They went quiet. Finally, one of them said, "There used to be a site up there and burned down in 2009. Family of 3 died in a fire. Camp stove explosion. I felt sick." "A family of 3? He nodded. "Parents and a little girl. Locals say sometimes you can still hear them laughing." Mark and I didn't speak the entire drive home. For the next week, he barely left his apartment. I called him constantly, but he was distant, hollow. Then one night, my phone rang at 3:12 a.m. It was Mark. His voice was shaky. "They're outside." "Who?" I asked. "Them." Then I heard faint laughter through the line, a woman, a man, and a child, before the call cut off. I drove to his place immediately. The lights were on, his car in the driveway. But when I knocked, no one answered. The door was unlocked. The living room looked normal except for one thing: his camping gear was scattered across the floor. His sleeping bag, his flashlight, his boots, all damp, covered in pine needles, and on the coffee table there was a small pile of ash. In it, I found something half-burned, a photo of us from that camping trip, the one I took right before the first nightfall. But in the picture, there was someone else standing behind us, a little girl. Her hand was on Mark's shoulder. I called the police. They searched the house, the woods nearby, even checked old well sites. Nothing. Mark was gone, no signs of struggle, no forced entry. He'd just vanished. A few months later, I went back. I know how insane that sounds, but I couldn't sleep. Couldn't stop thinking about him. I had to see it for myself one last time. The road was barely drivable, overgrown with weeds and roots. When I reached the clearing, our fire ring was still there, blackened stones in a perfect circle. But there was something new, a second fire ring, smaller, newer. And beside it, a pile of bones, animal bones, I told myself. But deep down I knew. As I turned to leave, I heard a soft voice behind me. "Come see this." It was the same woman's voice. I didn't turn around. I ran to my car, started it, and didn't stop driving until I hit cell service again. When I finally checked my phone, there was a voicemail from an unknown number. I pressed play, static. Then a faint sound beneath it, wind maybe, or whispering. Then a man's voice, low and calm. We took it back, the message ended. "I don't go camping anymore. I don't go near woods, but sometimes when I'm driving at night with the windows cracked, I swear I can hear laughter drifting through the trees, faint, echoing, fading into the dark, and I know it's them, still out there, still looking."